Welcome to our recap of the first round of the 2024 Candidates Tournament. We had one decisive game today, but plenty of interesting games, and we're going to show you the highlights now. One of the most anticipated matchups of the day was between the two Americans, Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura. And Fabiano was surprised in the opening by Hikaru's choice of a rare Sicilian, but he did achieve an advantage when Hikaru decided to play the very creative and unexpected bishop c3, rook takes b5, and rook takes f2, a rook sacrifice. That must have been shocking for Fabi, but he did figure out that taking the rook was too dangerous as it allowed the queen to come out and black would be getting a perpetual check against the king. So he correctly took this pawn and brought back the queen to defend his king against all threats. So at this point in the game, he was better. He's up a pawn. Of course, with bishops of opposite color, it is still work to win, but apparently his big mistake came right at this moment, Vishy, when he offered the rook trade, which looked very natural.
Yes, it looks like white eliminates one pair of rooks and the other rook goes to d7 and puts pressure on f7, but he never got very far. He did get an advantage, but at this point, rook d7 would have been incredibly strong, most importantly because it puts pressure on f7, but it removes the b7 square from the black queen.
Yeah.
So this was maybe the biggest miss, and there was a cute tactic on move 32. So let's just see how we got there.
So after the trade of rooks and a little bit of maneuvering, Fabi thought that he was bringing his a pawn up the board, and Naka unleashed another tactical idea with the move rook a8, putting his rook under attack to try to win this pawn, with the point that if white takes it, then queen e2 is going to give black at least a draw with that double attack. And so in a few more moves, black was able to round up that pawn. It wasn't able to make any further progress, and then Hikaru took it, and we knew the game was going to end in a draw. So pretty exciting game between the two Americans. Let's move on to the other games. We had two games that finished in interesting repetitions.
Yes.
Right? So we're not going to go into the game between Nijat Abbasov and Jan Nepomniachtchi. That was a pretty solid draw, but we'll show you a few of the key moments between Prague and Fuja and Vidit and Gukesh. So Fuja was white. He got his knight to d3.
Which is quite unusual in an open Spanish. Usually the knight's on d2, but this meant that this knight on d3 helped white. So the f-pawns looked deceptively weak, but with the knight on d3, I found it very hard to exploit that weakness. And so this is a slightly unusual structure. Let's see how Prague responded. Quite dynamically, rook takes f6. And I just want to show you the first rook gets to the thing, then the second rook comes, then it goes, the queen vacates the square, and then Prague starts rook h5. I thought this maneuver was just beautiful.
Yes.
And then if we go to move 30.
Yeah, I have to say this part of the game contained a lot of complications. Black's rook infiltrated, he took a pawn. Fuja responded with this move, trying to get his rook to the back rank. It was super sharp, and now Prague came up with queen h5. Really cool move.
Phenomenal thing, but as it turned out, he would need to play with incredible precision here. So we'll just see the game. Knight takes e6.
Black took the knight.
Queen takes g4.
White took the rook. Black is up in exchange, but now white is threatening a huge checkmate on e8. And it's not easy to defend against that at all, but Prague finds the cold-blooded move, knight to e5, blocking the e-file.
Yeah.
And when white captured that knight with the rook, that left the h2 pawn a little bit more vulnerable, and Prague landed a sacrifice there in order to open up the white king and make a perpetual. Now, unfortunately, black does not have any ways to bring in the rook or the queen closer to the white king, but he has that queen move backwards, and that is enough to guarantee a draw because white's king cannot escape the perpetual. So really sharp fight. with a lot of beautiful tactical ideas.
Majestic game. I think both the participants would have deserved to win had either of them won, but a draw certainly a very good start for both of them. Alireza managed to put a lot of pressure, and Pragnananda defended phenomenally. So fantastic.
And in the match between Gukesh and Vidit, we saw a cool rook lift early on in the game with rook a2. The rook went over to d2, definitely unusual. They reached this new position for move 11 that had never been seen before. And
move 17.
Then we have this situation where Vidit unleashed a move that we hadn't even considered.
Yeah.
Bishop to g4, vacating the c8 square for the rook, trying to get a knight here, and Gukesh found a way to keep the balance.
He just used the bishop and in between move, attacking the queen. Now the queen has to be in the vicinity of the bishop so that when the rook comes to c8, there are actually two pieces attacking the bishop. So Vidit had to go back to the only square a3. And then Gukesh went back to b2, and both players just had to repeat moves, and it was a draw. But it was a spectacular draw.
Yeah, and we had the last game of the day was the game that you guys probably remember seeing. It was Lei versus Tan. So we're not going to go into that right now. All the other games in the women's section finished in draws that I think were a little bit more tame than the ones in the open section today, even though the results were the same, but they were achieved in a different way. So let's take a look at these results. We have Alexandra Garechkina versus Katerina Lagno made a draw. Muzichuk Salimova, a reprise of their World Cup match, also finished in a draw. Tan Zhongyi was the only player to get a win today, and she got some revenge against Lei for their candidates final last year.
Fantastic king march, and you know, you should check it out. It's one of the most beautiful mating patterns I've seen, with very limited material. It's very hard to mate a king on g3 with the way it happened, but great game.
And now let's take a look at the open section results. All the games finished in a draw for the first time in the history of round one in the candidates for like the last 10 years.
Is it?
Yes,
Wow,
it's
okay.
really, since I went through them all this sheet today, and I know that every single candidate has had at least one decisive game since 2013, as high as 3 decisive games. So it's actually a new thing that we have had all 4 games finish in a draw, but really exciting games. I think for the exception of Abbas of Nepo, we definitely got a lot of food for thought today.
Definitely. It was a great round, and I think a harbinger of more.
Yeah, so tomorrow, guys, come back for round 2. We're going to be starting at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, and we're looking forward to seeing you again and seeing how these candidates unfold.